We're going to be starting with multiple intelligences. I believe that is on page 10. Yes. Okay, so we're continuing with multiple intelligences. This is, I think, a very important theory that Howard Gardner summarized. I think he summarized it quite aptly with the different forms of intelligences. A one-size-fits-all approach to education will invariably leave some students behind, and we know that not everyone is the same. And Howard Gardner says that there are multiple types of human intelligence, each representing different ways of processing information. Okay, so in your assignments, you will come across people who are going to process information differently. So here are some that are aptly coined by Howard Gardner. So we have verbal linguistic, logical mathematical, visual spatial, musical intelligence, naturalistic, bodily kinesthetic, interpersonal, intrapersonal. Okay, so verbal linguistic refers to an individual's ability to analyze information and produce work that involves oral and written language, such as speeches, books, and emails. Now, everyone, let me just, you would have read this already, but let me just preface our discussion that we all have every one of these 8 intelligences, but we would see them manifested in different ways, okay? So sometimes you may have a preference on how you like to process information, but that doesn't mean that you don't have that skill set that's in another intelligence, okay? So oftentimes, I think looking at categorizing things, you might unfortunately want to look at someone in just one way, but you must realize that people are multifaceted. It's good to have an understanding of maybe someone's preference, but don't just pigeonhole them in a box so that's the only way that they like to process information, because they might be a kinesthetic person but also a musical person. Okay, so some of these may overlap. You may see different manifestations and different combinations. So someone who is a verbal linguistic learner may really like to do a booklet, okay? And so I had one assignment that I gave students, and I try when I do my lesson plans to consider all different types of learners and how people want to present an end product, or even how they'd like to receive it. So I even in Spanish, I give kids an opportunity to write a story. Maybe you would have a booklet where there's maybe 1 or 2 lines in Spanish. You get to draw a picture or whatever, put your whole book together. Someone who's a verbal linguistic learner would think this is the best assignment ever. If only she could do all the assignments like this, I would have 100% in her class, because I got the opportunity to process the information in the way that I like to. Okay, so you want to present things different ways. And even in our morning session, you can see a few of the different intelligences that I incorporated while we were doing our review of the information. So got you to get up out of your seats, the bodily kinesthetic. Maybe you're like, yes, yay, I got to stand up, you know, praise God, you know, maybe you like that. Yeah, so you try to present things in different ways. Oh, I got to write a list, you know. That's great. I like presenting information like that. So you want to consider different ways that people process information. Okay, so logical mathematical describes the ability to develop equations and proofs, make calculations, and solve abstract problems. Okay, so I used to teach algebra as well. When you teach at a private Christian school, like I did, they said, okay, great, you were hiring you to teach Spanish, but guess what? You got to teach a math class too. I was like, oh, great. Well, because then the principal said, well, I looked at your transcript, and I see that you're very strong in math. Well, yeah, my first degree is in business, so you needed to have that math, right, when you're working in finance. So she said, oh, yes, you're very strong in math, so we're going to throw in an Algebra 1 class for you, too. So I said, okay, praise God, praise God. So I did teach Algebra 1 as well as Spanish. So I have an example of the distributive property. So maybe you are a logical mathematical learner as well. You're like, yes, I remember that distributive property. I remember that formula. You know, what does a distributive property say? It says multiply a sum by multiplying each addend separately and then add the products. Okay? A lot of times my students would say, oh, you can't use this in life. Oh, and I wanted to have a direct application. Well, guess what? You can. You know, because somewhat I am a logical mathematical person as well. And some people are like, yes, this is my favorite time of the day when I get to do math. And other people are like, somebody kill me quick. Right? But you have all these different types of learners. Maybe you're, yes?
Were you enthralled or excited about the movie Hidden Figures?
Probably for different reasons. As a brown woman, that's what was paramount to me. I was like, yes, they were recognized for the intelligence that we know that we have. So as far as the numbers, not so much, but the underrepresentation of brown women in that field, that's what really stood out to me, yes. Multiple intelligence, visual spatial, so allows people to comprehend maps and other types of graphical information. So it's so funny because I ought to find out what type of learner my mother and my sister are, because they definitely aren't visual spatial. And it's funny because my brother and I probably are more logical, mathematical, visual, spatial than they are. And if we go to a place where we didn't know, my mom and my sister are like, you get them inside a building, they don't know which way is north. Which way, well, how can you not know? They just get totally lost once they're inside the building. They don't know which way west, north, whatever. But if you want to go on a road trip, or even venture somewhere, I'm your girl. You know, I was talking to my grandmother on the phone the other day, and they had a road blockage, and so she's 91, bless her heart, but she said, "Are you looking at your computer?" She's talking about my GPS, and I was like, "No, Granny, I don't have the GPS on. I know in which direction I should go to avoid this accident." And so I knew that I had to go west. So I was navigating north, and then I was at west. And I knew I'm going to come out, you know, in the area where I needed to be. And I thank my visual spatial intelligence for that. Okay, so musical enables individuals to produce and make meaning of different types of sound. Now, in language learning, we have a concept called, well, in linguistics, high involvement. That kind of describes a culture where they speak loudly, maybe over each other. The textbooks would say examples of that would be like an Italian culture, you know, the Latin cultures. Not so much like the Anglo cultures, where they're a little quieter. I had the pleasure of teaching a class that was super high involvement. And these kids, I was just talking to Pastor Lee at the break, I would be in my staff meetings, and the teachers would be talking about, oh, that 11th grade class. You know, it was like the vein of their existence. And I was like, in my mind, that's my favorite. I love them. And so they were like, what is your secret? You know, because we're having all these problems with them. I'm like, I don't have problems with them. And You know, I had said to them too, this is just a little bunny trail. I said to them one day, I said, you know, teachers are talking about you and that, you know, you're a real challenge. Why don't I see that in my class, what other teachers are seeing? And they said simply, because you respect us. And so we respect you. So we had a level of respect that was a great foundation. Then I gave them liberty to express their musical intelligences. Now this was a class, there's a lot of them, one of my larger classes, but they liked music, and I realized that. So sometimes if they had quiet work to do, I would allow them to sing so they could sing softly. And we would do like a little 4-part harmony, whatever, while they were working. And they loved it. I wasn't always the best neighbor to my teacher. Besides, she would call me often. She'd be like, "You're too loud." I said, okay. The phone's ringing. We've got to be quiet. But this is a little clip of this class. Now, this was not the end result. This was what I could readily find on my phone, my Google Photos. But I gave them a little more liberty than probably I would in another class. Now, let's say compared to another class I had that I could not have done this with, I needed that class to be a lot more quiet because they could not handle the liberty. Now, these guys, I could rein them in. They would get, whoo, and then okay, she said stop. So they come back in. So we embraced their musical intelligence. So we were doing a verb form. And my sister is, she's a recording artist. And while I can hold a tune, my sister and my brother are much more gifted musically than I. And so I said, okay, this is what I want to do. And over the years, I've created songs. My brother is very good with laying tracks. My sister comes up with melodies. I've used the music in my classrooms to teach. So I called up my sister. I said, okay, Apple TV in the classroom. I'm going to get my sister on FaceTime, and we're going to make a song. And I'm like, this is what we're going to do. I need some help with the melody or whatever. And so we came up with a little something so they could do their verb endings. So you will see a little bit of what we did. So there's the kinesthetic, because they're doing the little dance moves, you know, and some of them are just like, what? Okay, that's dancing, okay, yay. but they got the verb endings. So we had some harmony in there, and they were able to grasp the concept because we chose to embrace the musical intelligence.
Stand up after the first time I did it.
So just a little silly, just verb endings, and consequently, because I approached learning with them, considering their preference for processing information musically, they thought my class was amazing. At the end of the year, when the seniors graduate, they always give in a special assembly the seniors an opportunity to share, and then they say, what was your favorite class? They always say, Spanish 3! And the chaplain was like, well, why do you guys keep saying Spanish 3? It was lit! You know, and it was like, oh my gosh, I just got my report card. My class was lit. But only because I approached their multiple intelligence preference. Now, not everybody, but there were a lot of them that had that preference, right?
Did you do it kind of at the spur of the moment, or did you already have it planned in your class notes to do it on that particular day?
No, this class, I created that little song for them. I hadn't used it with any other class, but because I was spending so much time with them and noticing that they had this preference for a musical processing of information, I said, okay, I've got to definitely tap into that with them. Yeah.
Stand up after the first time I did it.
that back. Okay. Naturalistic refers to the ability to identify and distinguish among different types of plants, animals, and weather formations found in the natural world. Maybe you're that person who can tell a stratus cloud from a cumulus cloud, and I watch Channel 8 News, and there's a meteorologist, and they show a little advertisement for him and his skill set, and it's a little boy depicting him that he loved weather when he was small, and then it shows him now, and I still love weather. So maybe he knew that he had a naturalistic preference. Bodily kinesthetic entails using one's own body to create products or solve problems. You saw in that video, the kids were happy to get up and and you see even the ones sitting, they're doing a little something like, oh my gosh, this class is lit because I get to use a bodily kinesthetic. Maybe you're not even a good dancer, but I want to do an exercise with you. If everyone would stand up, just find enough space that you can mimic my movements. Okay, so I have this book, and this is one of my favorite children's book authors, Sandra Boynton. When I became pregnant, I wanted to buy all of Sandra Boynton's books to read to my precious baby while she was in utero, and so I'm a big fan of Sandra Boynton. I also realized that Sandra Boynton had them in Spanish, so I would read to her in English, I would read to her in Spanish while she was in utero. But then I also got to use these in class sometimes too. I thought it would be great to depict the kinesthetic processing of information. Now, some of you are Spanish speakers, some of you know a little Spanish, but I'm going to do some in language and learning, we call it TPR, total physical response. It's basically another name to identify kinesthetic learning, okay? So you're going to mimic the actions that I do, okay? And I'm sure we could probably decipher what these words mean, okay? Grande. Pequeño. Okay? Bajo. Alta. Okay, you have to be careful too, because culturally you don't want to, I don't know, the Spanish speakers know you don't talk about like the height of children like this. You do it like that. Yeah, because that's for animals. Okay. Arriba. Abajo. Rápido. Despacio. Muy pesado. Levantito. Despierto. Dormido. Adentro. Afuera. César. Grita. Débil. Fuerte. Correcto. Equivocado. Calor. Frío. Joven. Viejo. Mojado. Seca. Hola. Adios. Okay, so that's using some kinesthetic. You kind of could you can have a seat. You could understand what I was conveying. Yes? Even though I didn't give you an English explanation of what those words were, you could understand. Rápido means fast, and despacio means slow, right? Yes, so you would use the kinesthetic, and lots of people have a preference for that if you're learning, okay? Okay, multiple intelligences, interpersonal, reflects an ability to recognize and understand other people's moods, desires, motivations, and intentions. Okay, that is a definite skill set. Some people are not as apt to understand as others. Some people are great at that. And intrapersonal refers to people's ability to recognize and assess those same characteristics within themselves. Okay, so multiple intelligences represent different intellectual abilities. Learning styles are the ways in which an individual approaches a range of tasks. So there is a difference between multiple intelligences and learning styles. Everyone has all 8 types of the intelligences listed above at varying levels of aptitude, and it's useful for an educator to think about the different ways that information can be presented. If you're trying to follow me right close to the study guide, I am just taking out some highlights, not going directly. Okay, so providing students with multiple ways to access content improves learning. So you don't want to just have this one-size-fits-all prescription for all your children, right? You want to consider that I have individuals. And as I'm planning, I need to consider that people like to process information differently. Providing students with multiple ways to demonstrate knowledge and skills increases engagement in learning and provides teachers with more accurate understanding of students' knowledge and skills. Okay? Instruction should be formed as much as possible by detailed knowledge about students' specific strengths, needs, and areas for growth. I think that this is one of the things that really allows teachers to be effective because they are considering who is in their classroom, and then you get your report card at the end of the year as a teacher that your classroom is lit because you recognize I have all these multiple intelligence, musical preference learners, and so I'm going to tailor at least a couple of my lessons towards this musical preference, right? When I was teaching middle school, the principal decided one year for our 3rd year students we're going to, in Bermuda we call it just M3, M1, M2, M3, which is the equivalent of 6, 7, 8. So for our M3 students, we were going to just have gender-based classes. And I thought, this is amazing. I'm going to love teaching the girls because I'm a girl. And I know about girls. And when those boys came, I was like, I love teaching boys. I love it. Because the girls, they were like, yes, we're happy to do some writing. That's going to make me happy and I'll feel safe. Reading and writing. I mean, you know, I'm not just trying to blanket, but for the most part, the girl classes were quieter. The boys, I could put some Skittles in a cup and have a color relay. You run back to the back of the classroom, you're going to get rojo, you're going to get amarillo, you're going to get verde. You know, and those boys would be so into it. The girls would be like, she's too much, you know. But the boys, they loved it. So you have to tailor your classes to your learners. Don't just think one size fits all. This worked with them. It surely is going to work for them. No. You might have to tweak it or just tailor it a little bit depending on who is looking at you. Okay? All right, we have about 2 minutes. Ms. Jackie? Was it Jackie? Yes. Okay, so you're going to throw the ball to someone who has not had an opportunity to share. To learning styles. Okay, so VARC is an acronym that refers to the 4 types of learning styles. So this is what Cal was alluding to with the auditory. So we have visual, auditory, reading, writing preference, and kinesthetic, okay? So you have this in your study guide as well, this chart. So visual learning style. Visual learners prefer the use of images, maps, and graphic organizers to access and understand new information. An auditory learner best understands new content through listening and speaking in situations such as lectures and group discussions. All learners use repetition as a study technique and benefit from the use of mnemonic devices. Read and write. Students with a strong read and writing preference learn best through words. These students may present themselves as copious note takers or avid readers, and are able to translate abstract concepts into words and essays. And kinesthetic, students who are kinesthetic learners best understand information through tactile representations of information. These students are hands-on learners and learn best through figuring things out by hand, understanding how a clock works by putting one together. Okay, so learning styles influence, of course, obviously, how people process information. Students' preferred learning modes have significant influence on their behavior and their learning. And students' preferred learning modes should be matched with appropriate learning strategies. So just to re-emphasize, yes, you do have to consider the multiple intelligences of your students and definitely their learning styles as well. Information that is accessed through students' use of their modality preferences shows an increase in their levels of comprehension, motivation, and metacognition. What is metacognition? I just put that in parentheses. Awareness and understanding of one's own thought processes. Okay, so we're going to, in just about 2 minutes, we'll take a break, but we're going to come back, not to the new topic, but we will continue with learning styles. You've already read the study guide, and today we have, once again, gone over it, but we're going to delve a little bit more into learning styles when we come back. I think that the example of that Spanish classroom with the song is a great example, because not only, and I didn't say this earlier, not only did they enjoy the class, they were motivated to come to the class. It translated into excellent grades. So these kids, regardless of their aptitude for language, because of their multiple intelligence and learning style that was nurtured, they had great success. Probably more A's than any other grade in the class. And I spoke to their learning style and the multiple intelligent or musical preference, and they were motivated to study, and it translated to great results. Okay, so if you could just as you leave here today, we're not leaving yet, of course, but as you leave and you're making an application, if you would just think about it. These kids, they love music. She presented a class musically. They thought her class was lit. They were motivated. They got A's as a result. They had success. Okay, so we're going to take another 15-minute break, and then we're going to come back for our last session.